Hey guys, it is the Bones and Brunch podcast. I'm Carly.
And I'm Shelby.
And today we are going to share the Lizzie Borden axe murderer story.
Oh, I feel like it's kind of been a week of Lizzie's. I watched the Lizzie McGuire movie last night.
Oh.
I was bored. My husband had a migraine. I was chilling by myself.
Lizzie McGuire, I love it so much. I used to try to stream it on YouTube. And
so on Disney Plus, they have a throwback title section. I don't know if that's what it's called, and they had the 13th year, Lizzie McGuire, what's the one with Lindsay Lohan? Get a Clue? Is that what it's called? They had that one on there. They had a whole bunch of
Even Stevens.
Yes, the Even Stevens movie was on that title. Boy. Just everything we watched whenever we were teenagers on Disney Channel.
That really takes me back. And who doesn't love a big bowl of nostalgia, right?
Mm-hmm. Since I watched the Lizzie McGuire movie, of course, me being the way that I am, pulled up the Lizzie McGuire movie soundtrack. And the YouTuber that you like, Trisha Paytas? Is that how
Trisha Paytas?
Paytas. I don't know how you say her name.
We all have guilty pleasures, okay?
Yeah, so your guilty pleasure YouTuber, she redid a song from the
She did that. Hey now.
Hey now.
Yeah, What Dreams Are Made Of.
Yeah, What Dreams Are Made Of. She redid that, and I'm like, I'm shook. I have to tell Carly, but of course you already knew about it.
Yes, I sure did. Of course. And I definitely watched that music video when she came
did
out.
A music video?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm serious.
Did she wear the green or the purple skirt?
Oh yeah, she did the whole
low-rise pants.
Yes, she did the whole thing. She always does. Trisha does. She go big or go home.
That's right. She's extra.
She is the most extra person in LA. I know that, and I'm just kidding. I really don't. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so have you heard of the Delphi murders? Is it? Yeah, Delphi, Indiana. Okay, so
I don't think I have.
Back in 2017, this might spark your memory. Back in 2017, there was these two girls, roughly between the ages of 10 and 13. Mm-hmm. And you guys, I'm saying this because I don't know this the back of my hand, but this has been in the headlines recently. So back in 2017, and I remember when this came out, these girls were pretty much just hiking in in a park, but it's a park in Indiana that had kind of a mountainous terrain. Mm-hmm. They were just there. Their parents dropped them off to go hiking and hang out and whatever. And it was an area that they knew well. Mm-hmm. Was not a strange place. Well, there was a man following them, an older man, and he was in this hooded jacket with a hood on and everything.
Creepy.
And one of the girls, obviously the two girls, they go missing. When they find the bodies of these two little girls, one of the girls was in the right of mind, and she recorded this guy following them.
I'm already cringing.
And it's a 5-second video, and she's doing a selfie type where it was the front facing camera, and you can see him in the background, and he's going down the hill, is what he's saying to the girls, down the hill. And that's all you see.
Oh my god.
And then they found the bodies. Fast forward to 2021, last week. They have arrested a suspect.
So did they find the bodies? The remains in 2021 or in 2017?
They found them in 2017.
Okay.
Pretty shortly after.
Okay.
And they recovered them in the area that they were in. Fast forward to 2021. This guy is arrested, and we'll go into that in a second. But listen to this. Okay, so this guy he lived in a neighborhood, mm-hmm. and there was a 9-year-old girl in the neighborhood, 1 or 2 houses down from him. And he invited her into his house. This happened last week. He invited her into his house to meet his new puppy or something like that. Oh my God. The typical standby of these kind of creatures. And yes, they're not humans, they're creatures.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he invites her in, and he takes her to the basement or to a bedroom, I can't remember which one. Locks her in there. He chains her up.
No.
Immediately. Ugh. He locks her up, and he starts to molest her. And as he's doing this act, the whole neighborhood is outside screaming her name, looking for her.
Oh my god.
The police...
Did they find her at least?
The police show up, and he immediately goes outside in the yard, and he's like, I saw her around here a couple
No.
hours ago. Well, the police got this really weird feeling. They asked to go into his house and was like, can we look around in your house? Do you mind, sir? And he's like, no, go ahead. And as he does that, the little girl is like behind the door, like, help me, whatever. They hear her crying and stuff. And they bust open and they find this 9-year-old girl that he was definitely going to rape and kill.
Oh my God.
So thank God they found her, because that's actually highly unusual for them to find a child like that.
Yes.
In the midst. So they arrested this guy, and now they think that he's the suspect in the Delphi murders, because apparently it's not too far from where he lives. He's had past transgressions before with children, and he was actually in prison for a while. And there was a headline this morning where his family was interviewed, and his brother said 110% my brother would have killed those girls.
Oh my God.
Now, they don't know for a fact. He's just being accused of it.
Yeah.
In connection with that. But right now, he was arrested really because of the 9-year-old girl they found. But they're thinking that he is also the one that murdered those girls, because I think he was in prison and then got out in 2016, and then those girls were murdered in 2017. And he has
no time at all.
He's a predator and has a violent history.
Yes.
Because he was in prison, obviously. See, they should just not let them the fuck out.
Yeah, I don't think predators should be, not whenever it's violent crimes like that.
There are some people that just can't change. I believe anybody can change, but when you are that, like, demented and mentally handicapped, you're beyond, like, what a normal person can change.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a bad habit.
You're beyond of what the prison system can fix.
Exactly. Like, you just need to be monitored forever at that point. And I know that they are, but, like, this guy got away with this shit. And if it does come out that he is the guy from the Delphi murders, how did he get away with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
2 little girls, too. It wasn't just one. He fought 2 of them. So one of them sat there and watched him do that shit to the first one.
Yeah.
Horrible. So yeah, wow, that was a fun icebreaker. But today I learned. We'll keep tabs on that one.
Yes. So Lizzie Borden.
Down to the nitty gritty.
The axe murderer.
The axe murderer. Alleged.
Oh, yeah.
Because she was never accused of the crime.
That's correct.
Well, no, that's not true.
She was accused, but...
She wasn't convicted.
Correct.
She was acquitted. You know, all this fancy legal jargon, whatever. Okay, so let me just put that out there. Lizzie Borden is iconic. Everybody knows the name.
Yes, everybody in the true crime community knows the Lizzie Borden name.
It was one of the 19th century's most infamous crimes. It is one of the first crimes in that century to produce crime scene photos.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was the first of its kind to be publicized like it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you see with this case is the media was all over it. There were hundreds of newspapers back then, and Fall River, the city where the crimes were committed, was put into the spotlight overnight, because it was so hard at that time for people to understand how a 120-pound woman in that society would be able to pull off one of the most brutal murders Fall River and really the country at the time had ever seen outside of war.
Yeah, because women were looked at like delicate little flowers.
I mean,
back in that time period.
Exactly. And she ticked all those boxes. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, like every other podcast on the planet, we have to talk about the schoolyard chant. Everybody knew.
Oh, yes.
Everybody knew this. It was like, Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
Yep.
Okay, that's not actually accurate, but...
It's something like that. And it's like a nursery rhyme, like, you know, Ring Around the Rosie type of...
Exactly.
Chant, song.
And the Ring Around the Rosie was about the fall in London. Yeah.
Wait, the fall in London?
I mean, not the... I'm thinking about...
You're thinking London Bridge. London Bridge is falling down. You're the mom here.
Yes. No, but that's true. Man, I'm failing. But the Pocket Full of Posies is the same thing.
That's the plague one.
Yeah. It's just What is wrong with children back then? It's like they were was that their coping mechanism?
I guess. Did the children come up with those songs or the adults that raised them? You have to think.
I'm not sure because all of those were so long ago. I went to the Lizzie Borden house a few years ago. I went on a trip and I went to the Lizzie Borden bread and breakfast, and it was quite the experience. The house is absolutely gorgeous.
I know, I'm so jealous that you went. I've seen pictures of the house and it is gorgeous.
It literally looks exactly like the pictures. And they have done an incredible job at keeping that 1892 feel to the home. They have some originals in there. A lot of it is actually not originals, but they are originals from that time.
Yeah.
Because some things got abandoned, but most everything got sold.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can only do so much whenever it's over 100 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it actually was just sold last week.
Are you serious?
The property, yeah.
Is it still going to be a bed and breakfast?
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully. So their website, if you want to book the bed and breakfast, which I highly recommend, and if you don't stay there, I didn't stay there. I wish I had. But if you don't stay there, at least go there and do the tour because it's so worth it. And it's not a spooky tour. It's a normal tour. It's a 3-story house, but they tell you spooky stuff because the house is so charged with so much spirit activity that it's just part of the normal tour.
Yeah.
They show you pictures of
ghosts.
Well,
it's part of the history of the house as well.
I mean, exactly. Why else are people aren't there just because it's an old house. People are there because it was the house that the murders were committed in.
And to creepy shit like us.
And to creepy shit like us. So it's a bed and breakfast. Fun fact, when you go to the tour, there's actually a property cat that greets you. If you go on their Facebook, they actually show the cat like a lot.
Aw, kitty.
But he's a normal resident. Now that was a few years ago, so hopefully the kitty is still with us. But yeah, he was...
Cats live a long time.
Okay, so the Lizzie Borden house was actually sold. It was listed back in January, and it sold sometime last week for $2 million.
I'm surprised it took that long for it to sell.
What I read was this guy, the new owner, he actually showed up for a tour, saw that it was for sale, and decided, I'll buy it.
Ugh, of course.
So I kind of like that
he
was there as a fan.
Yeah.
And not someone as seeing, all right, let me bulldoze this down and build a skyscraper on it.
Well, I'm sure at this point it's a historical landmark.
Well, that's true. I guess I didn't think about that. I guess I just appreciate a good history buff.
Yes.
So anyways, go check that out. I'll cut this to make this look cuter, but it's definitely worth it. And I believe that it's haunted.
Yeah, and I was so jealous and can't believe you didn't tell me that you went to the Lizzie Borden house until we started this podcast. And I'm like, you've been keeping this knowledge from me for like our 3-year friendship. What is wrong with you?
Well, I mean, it's just like another day to me. Oh. Go to an ex-murderer house.
Yeah. Just another day in Carly's life.
One of the reasons this is such an infamous crime is because this was high society type people. Mm-hmm. Now, we're taking it back to 1892, okay? 100 years before I was born, which is so weird to think about. It went viral in that day. Fall River was known as a step up from the suburbs, but a step under from Bel Air. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was an up-and-coming area. People had, moral values. That's just what their culture. They were fancy. That was their culture back then. And so a crime occurring like this was absolutely unheard of.
Yeah, I especially bet in that neighborhood.
So Lizzie Borden pretty much became a local celebrity due to the murders of her parents. And for reference, a lot of this information I got from several different websites, but the most I actually got was from the Smithsonian YouTube channel. I really wanted somewhere that was reputable, that had a good reputation for being accurate. And they really showed you in more ways than just telling you exactly how the crimes were committed. They made dummies to recreate the actual crime. And if Lizzie Borden had done this, it would have been an absolute bloodbath. So it's really interesting to me that she got away with it. So we'll see. The murder and trial occurred during a time when the quantity, quality, and the content of American newspapers were changing rapidly. It was going from news stories that mattered to something sensational. Mm-hmm. Everything was more elaborate. Everything,
Yeah, like those crazy headlines, like
National Enquirer.
yes,
Like,
yeah.
aliens, are they real? They were going to make a monster out of her. And even though she was acquitted at the end of it, by the surprise of not just her, but everyone, she had to move.
Yeah, I mean, she had a reputation at that point.
She did. Now, they owned the house for a while. But yeah, she ended up leaving Fall River along with her sister, who was her husband pretty much, because they were both spinsters. So let's try to get to the 19th century axe murderer, Lizzie Andrew Borden. She was born on July 19th, 1860, to parents Sarah Anthony and Andrew Jackson Borden. She had one sister, Emma, and they were extremely close.
Yeah.
They were best friends, and they both died unmarried. They lived with each other for a very long time, even after the murders. And at the time of the crime, Lizzie was 32 and Emma was 42, which is extremely old, even in today's standards, to be living with mom and dad.
Yeah, it is.
And now I understand back then, women didn't really have a position they could fulfill besides being a mother and a wife and a caretaker.
And they didn't move out until the day that they got married.
Exactly. But it's very telling that neither of these sisters got married, and they lived in such a prominent household. Now, they weren't considered super wealthy, but even in today's standards, I would consider them wealthy.
Yeah.
The day that their father died, Andrew Borden, he was worth $9 million in today's money.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So he had money.
I would consider that a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
But back then, perhaps not. I'm really not sure. But typically, she would have probably came with a dowry.
Absolutely.
So I don't understand why she didn't get married. Maybe she was just crazy. Who knows? So she had one sister, Emma, and they were extremely close. A little bit of background. Her father grew up poor, but he prospered later by selling furniture, including caskets, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting.
He then became a successful property developer. He owned several textile mills and other commercial properties within Massachusetts. So he was booming. He was busy. But
a businessman.
He was a businessman. But he was not nice. He was very unfriendly. And he was really tight with money. He never offered it to anybody. He was known in the community as being really strict.
Yeah, I remember reading something about that.
He was very frugal, very strict, wasn't approachable. And so people really didn't like him in the community. They just kind of tolerated him.
Yeah.
He was just the grumpy guy on the corner.
The grumpy guy on the corner.
Every neighborhood has that, right?
Right.
So he was the old grumpy guy. Again, Fall River was a very affluent area. Lots of business, like-minded people. They all had money. Everybody was comfortable. And the area is beautiful. Now, I don't know what it looked like in 1892, but when I visited, it is a gorgeous area. And it's not what you think. I mean, obviously it's called Fall River, but I really didn't expect it to be, like, on a body of water.
Yeah, that sounds like something that's out of a storybook, almost.
Yeah, kind of like Forks, Washington.
Yeah.
Like,
or Gilmore Girls Town.
Yeah, like Stars Hollow.
Stars Hollow, yeah.
Which...
Mystic Falls.
Exactly!
And Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, Fall River. God, it really does. It does sound like that.
Yeah, it does.
Well, they have a marina and everything. It's a large body of water that this house is surrounded by. And it's kind of up on a hill. For obvious reasons, growing up, Lizzie was brought up in a very religious community. That's just how it was back then. They lived to go to church. Everything was by the Lord and for the Lord. So she was actually kind of on a pillar in Fall River as she grew older because she didn't have her own family and because she wasn't married and busy. She became a Sunday school teacher at her church.
Oh, I did not know that either.
She actually taught immigrants that came in, and she would extend her hand to them and help them and teach them, and then she would bring them to church and get them involved. Her community was important to her.
Yeah, she was a member of society.
Exactly, she was. And as a woman, it was important to establish that and show what your interests are.
Of course.
She needed to get married. But as she got older, tensions became high, right? Because she's in her 30s. She's probably bitter that she's not married. Her dad certainly is bitter that she's not married. And
well, yeah, because he's having to provide for her rather than a husband.
And it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're talking about these girls would like leave for months on end to go get a dress, to go get fitted for dresses.
Oh,
and
goodness, yeah.
You know, it wasn't
Ordering from Amazon.
exactly like, well, when they were young, their mother died. Sarah, she died. So Andrew, the father, remarried to a girl named Abby Durfee Gray. Lizzie and Emma could not stand Abby. And it wasn't because of who Abby was. I did not find anything in my research that suggested that Abby was ugly to them, that Abby took advantage of them. Some stories painted her in a peculiar light. Emma and Lizzie resented her because Andrew would buy things for Abby.
Yeah.
He was happy, he was married, and he wouldn't just buy things for Abby. He would go out of his way and buy houses for her family members.
Oh, so they were getting the money
Yes.
rather than Lizzie and Emma?
Exactly. So it was a huge issue.
Jealousy.
Jealousy. Here they were doing chores at 30 and 40 in home. And Daddy's upset because he has to spend money on them when they should be on their own. But here is this new beautiful wife that he has that he loves so much. And he is, you know,
Spoiling
her and providing for her family. And honestly, back then, that's kind of normal behavior. Now, I don't know about buying houses for her family, but providing for his wife is normal.
Yeah.
And it was extremely uncommon for women over 20 to even live at home.
Yeah.
Let alone 32 and 42. That was just not normal. So, Lizzie, that's on you. Grow up. So, it even became to a point where the girls refused to eat dinner with Abby at the dinner table.
Oh my gosh, that's so petty.
It's so petty. But these are all...
No wonder they're not married.
They're all
They're
grown
acting
women.
like teenagers.
They're acting like children. They are. And they were. So it was just bad blood from the get-go. Lots of tension, a lot of fighting. There was even a time where it got so bad that Lizzie, left before the murders occurred. Lizzie left for a few weeks to retreat at another property that Andrew Borden owned to get away because the tensions, it was just so overwhelming in the home.
Oh, that sounds uncomfy.
It does sound uncomfortable. The fact that you have to take yourself away for a few weeks because the home is so bad, and nobody really knows what's going on there. The neighbors aren't aware of it too much.
Yeah, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors until someone gets chopped.
Exactly. Here we go. We're going to start getting towards the murder after we've done a little background. So we kind of know what the home life is like. Lizzie's a little jaded. She wants more money from her dad, and that's what they think might have been the motive behind the murders. But again, it was hard for them to prove that Lizzie murdered them at all. But we all know she freaking did.
Oh, yeah. She definitely did it.
Nobody else could have done it. Long story short, Emma and Lizzie, I was mistaken, I thought it was just Lizzie, but Emma and Lizzie both left and went to a property in New Bedford, Massachusetts. They stayed there for a few weeks, they relaxed, read some books, probably wrote some poetry. Lizzie was a huge reader. And when you go to tour the house, they've actually got a collection of her books. And every book that she has her initials in it.
Like her books? Oh, wow, that's cool.
Like books that she owned that she read.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if she wrote them. I can't remember that fact. But I have some pictures, and we're going to share all the pictures I have from my tour visit, which thankfully I took.
Yeah, I can't wait to see them. I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, they're really cool. So when the girls got back in town, it was about I would say 3 to 4 days prior to the murders. The murders occurred on August 4th, 1892. When they got back to town, it wasn't too long before their Uncle John Morse, who was the brother of their deceased mother Sarah, was there visiting. Now he showed up the night before on August 3rd, 1892. He was very close to Andrew. They were brothers-in-law at some point. They were really good friends. And as far as I know, John lived a little far away. It was really common for people to stay the night at each other's houses. Yeah. And this house in particular is interesting layout because this was before hallways were invented.
Oh.
So there are no hallways in this house.
So the rooms were like adjoining?
All the rooms are adjoining.
Is it still like that today?
Yes.
Oh, how is it a bed and breakfast if the rooms
you
are
have to be comfortable.
Oh.
with people entering in certain areas. Now, I can't remember if they have tried to reduce that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have, but you can stay in every room, including the room where the maid slept upstairs on the 3rd floor.
Oh, wow.
Which we'll go into her. She was
Okay.
she was a huge part of this, and a best friend. But anyway, so when the girls got back in town from New Bedford, Massachusetts, they were trying to make amends, and there was a rental property that Andrew owned, another one, and they demanded to buy it from their dad because they wanted something tangible that was just theirs because they didn't trust Abby. So I guess they had concocted this plan while they were in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Interesting. So he sold it to them for $1.
$1.
He was happy to give it to them.
After how much they mooched off of him?
I think he was just ready for them to get the hell out of his hair. I really believe so. I mean, I kind of feel bad for this guy because when he died, he was an old man.
I do too.
And after all of this, he just provided for his family. Now, I'm not saying he was good. He might have been an asshole. And according to the things that I've read, he was. He was kind of a jerk. But, you know, I digress. I didn't live in 1892. I can only go based off what I'm reading. While Uncle John was there, during the late nights, John and Andrew would discuss business investments and what men would do back then. They would eat, they would dine, and they would go in a room, smoke cigars, drink a shot of whiskey, and talk about money. Shit, guys still do that now. Well, Lizzie overheard these conversations. All of a sudden, she decided to sell back that house to her dad instead of owning it herself. So the next day, she turns around and she sold that house back to her dad, Andrew, for $5,000.
You gotta be kidding me.
Which is equivalent to $142,000 today.
Oh my gosh.
And he just sold it to her for $1. Why would she do that? Unless there was something in it for her besides just the money.
Yeah.
Either she needed some quick money or she was going to get a huge payout later because he still owned it.
Sounds like
Meditated.
Yeah,
right?
premeditated.
It does. It all comes, it's just amazing. It's just, what a crazy story. It's August 4th, 1892. It was a beautiful summer day. Beautiful summer day. We're in Fall Rivers, Massachusetts. And you guys, this, like I said, this property is near the water. It was a gorgeous day. I know it had to have been because I was there on a beautiful day. And I'm like thinking, how in the world?
You lived it.
Yeah, how in the world is anybody going to commit this act on such a gorgeous day? You guys are crazy. So the whole family wakes up that morning, and about 7 a.m., 7:30, they have breakfast in the dining room. Mm-hmm. Well, the first one to leave is Uncle John. Uncle John gets up and leaves, and his...
Like he leaves to go back to his town or just to do something?
I'm not sure that he left to go back to his town.
He just left the house.
He just left the house. It was actually confirmed. His alibi was confirmed. He was with 6 priests in a horse carriage.
Yeah, I think he was safe.
He was not near the house at all. Andrew, the dad, left about 8:45 to go on a morning walk. Because Uncle John had stayed there the night before, the guest room was kind of a mess, right? Yes, okay, so Abby walks upstairs between 9 a.m. and 10:30, so Andrew leaves about 8 a.m. or 8:45. Uncle John leaves about the same time. They are not in the house.
So it's just the women in the house at this point in time.
What we have is Maggie, which this was like her nickname, which was the maid. I just liked the name Maggie. So.
Maggie the maid.
Maggie the maid. It was just easy for me to remember. So Maggie the maid was there. Emma, the sister, was actually not there. Instead of going back to the house, if I can recall, Lizzie did all these dealings with her dad about this property. Emma was part of it because he signed the property over to Lizzie and Emma. But Emma was not there for this exchange. Emma actually left New Bedford and went to go get fitted for a dress. So she wasn't on the property at all either. So the only people in the house is Abby the stepmother, Lizzie, and Maggie the maid.
Okay.
So as the men get up and they leave, Abby gets up because Maggie, the maid, was told to go outside and wash windows. So Abby gets up herself and she goes up to the guest room to make the bed. During this time, Lizzie states that she leaves and she goes out the back door into the barn to get some lead weights for a fishing trip.
She's going fishing.
That was what her alibi was.
Okay. I don't know how it was back then.
Yes, so Lizzie, according to Lizzie's statement, Maggie's out washing windows, Abby's in the house, and Lizzie's out the back door in the barn in the back, which is actually their gift shop now.
Okay.
Getting lead weights for a fishing trip. So Lizzie comes into the house, to her horror, finding her dad bludgeoned to death on the sofa in the sitting room. Now, if I recall, the sitting room is actually on the second floor, and it's right outside of the room that Abby was murdered in.
Okay. So they were like across from each other.
Yes, there was just a wall dividing them. She was on the other side of the wall, on the other side of the bed, and he was in the sitting room, pushed against the wall that went to the bedroom that she was in, on the couch.
Who was murdered first, Andrew or Abby?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that. Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So,
I've never dug this deep into it.
So Lizzie comes in, horrified that her dad was killed brutally. Ugh. Blood is everywhere. And we're talking, his blood was fresh. It was dripping.
Oh my God.
It was dripping blood everywhere. So before Lizzie finds her dad murdered, how her dad gets back there, I didn't say how he got back in the house. So I guess while Lizzie was supposedly in the shed getting lead weights,
that's when he entered.
He arrived at the house and his key would not let him in. Okay,
Did someone lock the door on him?
Well, I don't know about that, but he could not get his key to work, so he banged on the front door.
Okay.
And Maggie came running and found him. As she was opening the front door, Lizzie was upstairs on the second floor laughing. Now, Maggie said she turned around and she did not see Lizzie, but she knew that she was up there.
Because she heard her.
Because she heard her. But according to Lizzie, she was in the back.
Oh, so Lizzie's saying she's in the back, but really she's
upstairs,
on the second floor,
where Abby is.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So her dad walks up to the second floor where the sitting room is, and he lays down on the couch to take a nap. That's when Lizzie comes in horrified, finds her dad murdered, calls for Maggie the secretary. Maggie goes and hollers in the neighborhood, and a neighbor named, I think, Miss Churchill, came over to help. As they were walking up the second floor stairs, and they actually they include this in the tour. As you walk up the second floor, there's an area where your eye level is the floor level of that guest bedroom.
Okay.
And as Mrs. Churchill and Maggie were walking up the steps, they came eye to eye with Abby's body.
No.
Before Mrs. Churchill had even seen Mr. Borden on the sitting room couch.
Ugh. So they're just walking into this awful crime scene.
And discover another one. So they get the police there, right? Lizzie didn't have a lick of blood on her. Nothing. And it was a ghastly scene. Look us up on Instagram at bonesandbrunchthepodcast. We will have images of the crime scene.
Yay, can't wait to see them.
Yeah, we have images of the crime scene and what it looks like today because I took comparison pictures. The police arrive. They take their pictures. Police back then were not equipped or trained, and shit, they're really not today, but that's like another conversation. In 1892, they were not ready for a crime scene like this, okay? And to this day, it is really a lot of their fault for why they could never have tangible proof of the murders. But anyway, so the police get there.
No testing kits, no nothing.
No. I mean, they had some of their own, but not for what this required.
Yeah, that's why so many people got away with so much shit back then.
Yeah. At first, Fall River was shocked at this. It was a huge thing, and immediately
it's this fancy little town where nothing goes wrong, and then all of a sudden you have two people brutally murdered in one of the nice neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. At first, the citizens, including Lizzie, blamed it on random intruder, an immigrant is what they would say back then.
God.
That's what they said back then. Okay, look, no immigrant is going to Fall River, Massachusetts to go into this one home and murder 2 particular people when 3 or 4 are there.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Just wait. The police arrive, they take their crime scene photos and whatever. As they are evaluating Abby, her blood was coagulated, which means it was dry.
Okay.
It was sticky. It was dark, and it had been there for a while.
So she had been there a minute.
She definitely died first, and Andrew just happened to not see her.
Oh my gosh.
As he walked up and took a nap.
So she was probably already, murdered at the point that he entered the home.
He was. Forensic analysis proved that she was murdered about 3 hours before he was.
Oh, so she was sitting there for a minute.
That concludes that there was no way it was a random assault.
Yeah.
The house was small for that time.
If it was a random person, they'd get in, commit the crime, and then get their ass out.
Yeah, and they take shit with them.
Yeah.
Nothing had been moved. There was no signs of struggle at all. Abby's murder was brutal. So her body was suspicious because of the position. It was also suspicious because of her blood. And keep in mind that I said Andrew's blood was still dripping. So Lizzie happened to find him seconds after he was murdered.
But not
with Abby.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Now people are like, well, where's Maggie? Where's the maid in all this? Okay, she was out washing windows. Then she had Mr. Borden come in. Okay? As she's helping him come in, she decides to take a break from washing the windows. And she goes up to her attic little bedroom in the attic, and she takes a nap during all of this. Which some people say can't make sense, but it does. Because Mr. Borden was asleep when he was struck. And Abby faced her killer. But it was like she was in there making the bed. It was like they said, hey. She turned around and they went, whop.
Yeah, like it was a sneak attack.
It was. And it was on the side of her head was the first blow. That made her body twist. She fell down.
I mean, rightfully so.
But she was still living after the first blow. And you guys have to think. This is the 1800s. This was like a lead, steel, really heavy hatchet.
Have you ever held an axe, in your hands?
Yes.
They are still heavy.
They are so heavy.
Yeah, I walked out in the backyard whenever I was a teenager while my dad was chopping wood and, just picked it up for the hell of it. And it was heavy. I couldn't swing that around.
Absolutely. It was clear that Abby was killed first. Andrew was killed second. Again, Lizzie ticks all the boxes for femininity, right? She was a Sunday school teacher. She dressed properly. She was in the community.
She had a reputation.
She had a good reputation. She came from money. She was older. But at that point, society just kind of accepts you as you're just not going to get married. That's just not who you are.
Yeah, not at that age.
Yeah, and if you have money, then it doesn't matter. Interesting enough. But she didn't have any money. Unless her dad was dead.
Yeah. Unless she was living off her parents.
Mm-hmm.
They were handing her money. She didn't have any.
And Andrew Borden was ready for her to go. He was just miserable. He was miserable. His wife was miserable. Everybody was miserable. So it was time for them to go, and they didn't want to go.
They liked their lives the way they were.
Fall River had a hard time grasping the idea that 120-pound, 32-year-old little dainty Sunday school teacher could perform such a vicious attack.
Oh yeah, I'm sure nobody thought she was capable of it at first.
They didn't. As they're examining Abby, they realized that she was struck 18 times.
Oh my god, that's rage.
That is rage. And it is clear that after 3 to 4 blows, she would have been dead.
Yeah, damn, no wonder there was a nursery rhyme made up about her.
Because it is just as ridiculous as the crime.
Yeah. Jeez.
18 blows to the head. She was first struck on the side of the head with the hatchet, which cut her just above the ear, causing her to turn and fall and face down on the floor. The reason they knew that she was still living at that time was based on the bruises that she had on her face from falling.
Okay.
So I guess it was like the warm blood rising. I don't know how that works. I'm not a scientist. But they were able to determine that she was still living as she was being hacked.
Oof.
Yeah, that's horrible. She had contusions on her nose and her forehead. And all of the hits were directly on the back of the head. So picture, they said, hey, yo, what's up, Abby? Abby turns around.
Yeah. In the 1800s. What's up, Abby?
What up, bitch? No, just...
Like my axe? Want a piece of me?
Yeah. So, you won't be at the sewing circle next week, Martha.
Oh my god.
I was trying to come up with some kind of, whatever.
The sewing circle.
Moving on. So Abby turns. She faces her killer. Boom.
Gets 18 whacks.
Gets 18 whacks. She gets the first whack on her head. She falls down, hits her face, bruises her face. Essentially, probably passes out from the pain or from the blow, because that first blow cracked open her skull.
Yeah.
It was a hard, thoughtful blow. This person then straddled her on side to side and whacked her 17 more times.
Oh my gosh, that is definitely rage.
In the back of her head. Now,
that's not an intruder.
That's not an intruder. Because remember, guys, this house is all planned together. There are no hallways. There is nowhere for anyone to hide. It did not even have indoor plumbing.
Oh, wow.
He was that frugal. He didn't even want indoor plumbing in the house. They still used outhouses. So there was nowhere for anyone to hide for 3 hours and wait for Andrew Borden to come home and wait for him to take a nap to kill him.
Yeah. It was an inside job.
It was an inside job. The police find Andrew. He was obviously slumped on the couch, and he was struck between 10 and 11 times with a hatchet-like weapon. One of his eyeballs had been split cleanly in two.
Oh no, that's a bad... Ugh.
Which suggests he had been attacked while he was sleeping. Interesting fact here, and I learned this thanks to the Smithsonian. Back then, it was believed that last images would be available in eyeballs. So back then, scientists were trying to prove that whatever a person saw, you would be able to see the reflection in their eyeballs.
Interesting fact.
They tried to do it with birds and everything. Well, they really couldn't prove it. And obviously, that's not a real thing.
Yeah, obviously. If it was, you could solve so many crimes.
It's kind of like
easy.
There's so many rumors now. One thing may work a certain way, another thing may work a certain way, and neither is true. People, it's like a what do they call it? Old wives' tale or
old wives' tale, yeah.
It was kind of like that. It was something that they were working on. They were trying to prove, but they couldn't. Mm-hmm. But it was still circulating in the communities. Well, people famously like Jack the Ripper was a huge serial killer at this time.
Yeah.
And Fall River actually thought he was the one that committed these murders, but obviously it was proven that he didn't.
Yeah.
But they thought...
in a different country.
Yeah, people thought that he was there. That was him. They also thought that when they murdered somebody, they would be able to tell with their eyeballs. So, by hacking their faces and their heads to death...
Oh, they were thought... Okay.
They were eliminating the proof. Now, that's just a theory. But I feel like if you're going to hack someone...
That's a good theory, though.
It is.
If that's what you believed back then.
Yeah. It really is an interesting theory. And it's not far-fetched, because these people were still, thinking that other people were witches and hanging them for it.
Yeah.
I know that was more so, 18th century, but that was still happening. There were still witch hunts and shit at that time.
Yeah, people were still being hanged then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they were. And when Lizzie was actually in jail, they measured her to see how much rope she was going to require. Because when they first began hanging...
I hope that scared the hell out of her.
Oh, I think it did. Because her trial was the trial of the century.
Yeah.
And it was the first publicized one. Well, one of the first publicized ones. Andrew got fucked up. Okay, let's just... Abby and Andrew...
God, poor Andrew and Abby.
They're dead. They were murdered in their own home. Doing normal things. She was making a bed. He was taking a nap.
Just an average day.
It was a gorgeous day from what I've read. And here they are. Now they're murdered. So the police start their investigation. We talked about their injuries, what they sustained. And when interviewing Lizzie, they said she was extremely calm. She wasn't erratic. She wasn't upset. They used her reaction while they were speaking with her and asking her, like, where were you? What were you doing? And she's saying, oh, I went out in the shed. I was getting lead weights for a fishing trip. Whatever. Somebody came in here and murdered my mom and dad. They thought that her demeanor was suspicious. So they went back in the house. They eventually went into the shed that Lizzie said that she was in.
Uh-huh.
And they find many hatchets and axes and all kinds of stuff.
No fishing supplies?
No fishing supplies.
Oh, good God.
But one thing that they did find was a hatchet without a handle. A handle that had been cleanly and recently broken off. But they leave it there.
That's smart.
And later on in the trial, her defense attorney tried to say that it couldn't have been a murder weapon because it didn't have a handle.
Ugh.
So, and it was the only, I think the murder weapon that they found was the only actual, like, hatchet.
Yeah,
that was in the house.
I remember, Okay, I remember something like that whenever I looked into this case a little bit.
It was the only one that would have been used for the actual weapon.
And it was, Didn't they find the handle eventually?
They never found the handle.
They never found the handle? Okay, I must be thinking of something else.
Not that if they had found the handle, that would have been awesome.
I feel like...
But I couldn't find anything that said they did.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they didn't. I'm
probably thinking of a different case where they found, like, it on somebody's roof or something like that.
Well, needless to say, the police really were terrible. They left the supposed murder weapon just because she said, that it wasn't a murder weapon. Like, obviously, it's just a tool in the shed, whatever. They took pictures, but they didn't rope off the scene. They let the Bordens continue to inhabit the house. And in fact...
Why would they want to?
The neighbors... They had asked some neighbors to come over and stay the night with them because they were scared in their own house. But they all chose to stay there. And the police let them.
Those must be some good-ass neighbors.
Yeah, the neighbors came and stayed the night with the girls, who are in their 30s and 40s, might I add. Oh, my God.
No, you can come to my house.
Yeah. And, okay, so I don't know. I can't remember if Emma came back that day or the next day. But remember, Emma's gone, and I keep forgetting that fact. So it's just Lizzie, but... Anyways, Maggie was there. That's what keeps getting me tripped up. Maggie the maid. Mm-hmm. This poor maid is traumatized by these events. And she is suspicious of Lizzie because she knows that Lizzie had an anger problem.
Well, yeah, Maggie knows she didn't do it and who was the only other person at the residence at that time.
Absolutely. She knew she didn't do it. She was, obviously, she was asleep. A little bit of backstory. About a week before the murders occurred, the entire family in the household were actually really, really ill. They were violently ill, vomiting, diarrhea, all that. And they were convinced that somebody was trying to poison them, but that was never proven. Yeah. And so all these things were happening. These mysterious illnesses were happening in the household before the murders. Ironically enough, the autopsies of Andrew and Abby were actually done in the dining room in the house.
Oh.
Instead of at a morgue or somewhere else.
Is that how they did it back then, or?
I don't know if it was common about autopsies, but it was extremely common to house your dead. Because even my Nana did this back in the 50s. It is obviously not practiced anymore. And I'm not sure if it's against the law or not. I'm not sure on the laws, especially here in Tennessee. But it was normal for, if a family member died, the family member would be laid to rest in the home. Like they are at a funeral home. They're just in a casket at the funeral home. And you can go visit them a couple days.
And they would do it in the home?
Yeah, but instead they would keep your family member in a casket in the home. And somebody would sleep with the body every night.
What?
My Nana had to sleep with her dead grandfather, if I can remember correctly.
Wait. So were they in the same bed, or were they in the casket?
No. So, like, the dead body would be in the casket in the living room.
Okay.
And somebody would, sleep on the couch in the living room.
Okay, that eases my mind a little bit more. I didn't know what you were saying at first.
Okay. I did not explain it right.
I'm probably just dumb, but either way, that's just mind-blowing to me.
I mean,
I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, that was a thing. So, as far as autopsies are concerned, I actually think that's pretty morbid. But perhaps the bodies were in such shape that they wanted it to be as accurate as possible and maybe perhaps
I
moving
can
it.
understand that.
Not everything was as sanitized as it is now.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not sure what the purpose behind that was, but I thought that was an interesting fact.
It is.
So while they're doing the autopsies, because of the illness that the neighbors told the police about the poisonings, potential poisonings, during the autopsy, they proved that there was actually no poisonings. They removed their stomachs and they tested them for certain poisons, but maybe it was just the poisons that they knew of.
Yeah. Not
the ones, maybe Lizzie had like, that shed was like full of, no, I'm just kidding. Full of poisons. Yeah, because they tried to pin a poisoning on Lizzie, and this was media driven actually, because
yeah, I'm sure at this point there were so many headlines.
There were so many headlines because this was ongoing. Lizzie was first arrested about 2 months, I think, after the murders. There was a 2 to 3 month timeline from the date of the murders to the actual time where she was arrested. There was what's called an inquest, which is like where they were interviewing her. Mm-hmm. They would not allow her to have an attorney or any kind of counsel, which is actually against the law.
Yeah, it totally
even
is
then.
Today. It was then too.
As far as I knew, it was then too. So that was a huge deal. But so there's this time period where there was nothing going on with the crime, like crime scene. People had open access to the house like any other time. No weapons were taken, nothing. Eventually, Lizzie was brought in. Now, in that 3 month period, she started becoming, she was prescribed morphine.
Okay.
The amount of morphine that she was prescribed is about 3 times the legal limit a hospital can give a cancer patient today. Because it was anything. It was just like opium in the 20s. Okay. People could go to Walgreens, let's say, and buy literally a giant vial of opium and just drink it.
Oh.
And that's how people became addicted to opiates. And here we are today, 2021, still suffering. Thank you, pharmaceutical companies, for ruining our country, but that is what it is. So I said neighbors came and stayed the night of the murders with Lizzie. Well, that night, there was her best friend named Alice Russell stayed the night. I guess during that time, something didn't sit right with Alice. And she actually went to the police and dropped a big bombshell that the night of the murders, she walked in on Lizzie burning a dress.
Oh my God.
So then the mayor and the police officer go to the Borden house. They let Lizzie know that she's under arrest. And they take her to the station or the equivalent back then. And they start the inquest. She could not keep her story straight. People said it was the morphine, which could definitely factor in that. The biggest alibi was that she was in the shed. Another alibi was that she was washing windows because Maggie was asleep. You know, there was just like all these different stories and none of them added up. I couldn't even write them all because it was just so many.
Yeah.
Because of her inconsistencies, because of her non-erratic behavior when she was supposedly traumatized by this discovery, she was traumatized of, her dad being bludgeoned to death. She was so calm in that, and then by the time she got to the police station where she's being pressured and answering all these questions and she's not making any fucking sense, they decide she's guilty. Now, they had no physical evidence at all. There is no way this crime occurred without blood splattering on somebody, especially the perpetrator.
Yeah, but the thing is, back in the day, there's no way to test any of that. Like, you see a blood splatter, they're just going to wipe it up. Oh, it needs to be clean. Here's this crime scene we have to clean up.
And it was actually normal for women to burn their dresses. Because when they were all they wore was dresses.
Yeah.
And when they would do projects or clean, shit would get on them. Now, they would have aprons and things of the like, but when you were a person of money, we're not talking about, she's not the maid here.
Yeah, fuck that. I'll just go buy a new dress. Let me
burn
this one.
Let me burn this dress. It was actually a regular occurrence because you guys, these dresses were made with yards and yards and yards and yards of fabric. They were heavy, they were huge, and if it was ruined and you couldn't sell it, if it got paint on it or something, you had to burn it.
You're not going to stick it in the trash.
No.
It's too heavy.
No. They might save some of the material for like curtains, but for obvious reasons, she burnt the dress.
because it was covered in fucking blood.
The night of the murders.
Now, your parents were just murdered. Why is it a priority? Oh, I'm not going to wear this dress anymore. I guess I'm just going to burn it. That's not going to be a priority. That dress is going to sit in a corner for a week.
Yeah, you're going to be depressed.
You're not going to
care.
The loss of your parents or your father and your stepmother.
Yeah, she didn't. Not at all. Now, I think she might have put on a show. She probably showed up for the service. She probably wore black mourning dresses.
I'm sure she did. She had to.
But she had to.
She was a member of society. People's eyes were on her.
Lizzie also stated that when her dad came in, and remember his key wouldn't work, and so he got Maggie to come and let him into the house before he walked upstairs to take a nap. Well, Maggie, at this time, during the inquest, she also testified. Actually, I apologize. Let me pull that back. During the trial, Maggie testified that she heard Lizzie giggling. She didn't see her, but she heard her giggling.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Right. Well, Lizzie said that was all a lie because Lizzie, according to her, even though she had said she was in the shed, now saying that, no, she was there when her dad was walking in the house. And in fact, she took off his boots and gave him his slippers. But in the crime scene photos, he's wearing boots. He's not wearing slippers.
So he just fell asleep on the couch.
He literally walked upstairs and took a nap on the couch because you didn't nap on beds because they were made.
Yeah.
That was obviously a lie. It was a bloodbath. It was just catastrophic injuries, a lot of blood, and a lot of people failed Andrew and Abby Borden. They just did. It was a trial of the century. It was so dramatic. The police or the forensics people, I'm not sure, I forget who actually did this. They actually took the real skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden, peeled everything off.
Oh, I don't like this.
And took their clean skulls into the courtroom with the hatchet they found in the shed, put the hatchet in the injury areas to show that it was the murder weapon.
I mean, I get that for a trial, but that is so disrespectful to the dead. It is
so disrespectful. And Lizzie was so traumatized by them bringing this in there, bringing these skulls in there, and the whole courtroom was in such a shock, she fainted in the courtroom.
Lizzie did?
Yes. And that is like in the history books. She literally fainted in the courtroom from the overwhelming. And this, every day of the trial, there were lines outside of the courthouse of the Fall River residents fighting each other for a seat in
that
this
reminds
trial.
me of the Casey Anthony trial. Do you remember seeing that on the news?
I watched every single bit of it. As soon as I got home from high school, I turned that shit on and I was like, what did I miss all day?
Me and my boss would watch it on the computer at work, where I worked at the time.
So her trial began on June 5th, 1893, 10 months after the murders occurred.
I guess that's not unusual.
I guess it's not. She was jailed for most of that time.
Oh, so she was incarcerated at the time?
From what I could find, she was incarcerated at the time. So prosecutors argued that somebody removed the handle because the handle of the hatchet probably would have had blood on it. So for obvious reasons, they got rid of it. I do believe that Lizzie committed these murders.
I do too. I feel like the majority of everybody in the true crime community believes that Lizzie committed these murders.
Andrew's blood was dripping.
Yeah.
How did she have time to fully redress herself, which getting dressed was like a 35-minute process?
Yeah.
And clean the hatchet so good that there was no evidence on the hatchet at all. Besides the fact that she had to take, because let's say wood is porous, right?
Yeah.
So, and rock is not, right? Is rock porous?
To an extent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But wood is really porous. Wood is going to get
Brady
stained.
Question.
Brady, can you call us? I'm just kidding. So I would understand the phone a friend. I would understand why they would have to take the handle off because there's no way she could have, got that blood to just come off like nothing happened. It would have to go and be burnt. But the hatchet was clean. She had no look of distress on her. Her hair wasn't a mess, which obviously because they did not fight back. They did not have a fighting chance.
Yeah.
But
she ambushed someone and the other person was sleeping.
There was no blood on her? How?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
And the hatchet was in the shed, like not in the house. So bizarre. I don't know how she pulled it off. And I've been trying to think about that because...
Do you think she had help? Like, just for your theory. Like,
I
do you
do.
think someone helped her?
I think Uncle John helped. I think Uncle John came in. He literally came in the night before the murders. I think when her and Emma were at this retreat, they planned it. Perhaps maybe not Emma, but it's pretty convenient that Emma wasn't there.
And was Maggie really sleeping through these murders?
I mean, was she? I don't know.
I don't think that Maggie did it.
Her attic room was pretty close to the crime scenes.
I mean, you hear someone... If you hear a crime scene out your window right now, your neighbors across the street, you'll hear it.
I don't know. It's just...
I know.
So here's the thing. Here we are.
Over 100 years later. With
130 years later.
Questions.
129 years later. Here we are. And we're still asking the same questions that investigators asked themselves. They could not physically prove that Lizzie committed these murders. They had intent. They knew that the family was doomed. They knew that there was bad blood. They knew that...
Bad blood.
They had every reason for a motive. They had multiple motives. Lizzie could not stick by an alibi, but there were no witnesses. There was no tangible physical proof. They had nothing of hers because the only thing that would have proved anything was the dress that she burned. And it had to have been the dress.
It had to have.
I almost wonder if she had a dress on top of a dress and just took the top dress off.
That would make sense.
That's the only thing I can think of. It's because guys, we had the corsets.
And didn't you need help getting dressed?
Yes,
back
that's
then? Like,
that's
was
what
it
I'm
like
saying.
A 2-person job?
Yes. So I'm wondering if she put on a second dress after being dressed that morning.
With Maggie's help.
Maybe. I don't know. After the trial was over, it took the jury an hour and a half to deliberate, and they acquitted her of all the charges. When she left, she spoke to a reporter and said she was the happiest woman in the world.
Oh, I bet she was.
She sure was. So, the trial's over. They never, ever arrest anyone ever again for these murders.
Oh, yeah, because in the end, she got what she wanted.
She
got
what
rid
she
of
wanted.
who she wanted, and she got away with it.
She sure did.
I bet she was the happiest person in the world.
They never found anybody. Okay, so she obviously, still to this day, she remains the prime suspect.
Yeah.
Even the people that do the tours in the home believe that she's the one that killed them.
course.
There's a writer, and her name is Victoria London. She proposed in 1967 that Borden might have been in a weird state because of the morphine during that time. Perhaps she killed them while she was on morphine, but okay, I've never had morphine, but I've seen people in a hospital setting on morphine, and these people are put out.
Yeah.
They're asleep. How was she functioning on such a high dose? Because it was like a dose that could have killed her. High dose, because they didn't understand the drug back then.
Well, absolutely.
Like, I forget what the actual percentage of, but...
And to have that kind of rage to go on a axe murder killing spree, wouldn't you have to have some kind of, what do they call it, like a hallucinogen?
Yeah,
drug?
perhaps. Yeah, something...
Yeah, I mean...
Well, they said, and this is from the Smithsonian, their investigators said that the person that was committing these acts hit these people until they were out of breath. So she was exhausted after the first one, which makes sense for the freaking time frame. She probably had to come up with the stamina to do it again.
Yeah.
And she didn't go on Andrew as much as she went on Abby. Not nearly as much, about half the blows.
Mm-hmm. Because she was tired.
There's also a lot of reports, because, again, it was such a scandal of the time, that the media came up with their own motives. There was a lot of people that stated that Lizzie was actually physically and sexually abused by her father, and that's what drove her to kill him. There is no evidence to support this, because incest was not a topic that would have been discussed at that time. I mean, it's hardly talked about now.
Yeah.
But that was the belief back in 1892. And it was the first of its kind. It was such a prominent case, and it shocked the entire country. I mean, everybody knew of Lizzie Borden. not just in Fall River. It went way beyond Massachusetts. She was up there with Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, people are still talking about Jack the Ripper and Lizzie Borden today.
It was such a poignant moment in true crime history. Let's put it that way.
I mean, Lizzie Borden is featured in crime shows.
Hundreds of movies.
Yeah, movies. There's a movie.
There's actually a new one out that came out about 3 years ago, and I went to rent it last night, and I just didn't because I was working on this instead. But it's with Kristen Stewart.
With Kristen Stewart?
Kristen Stewart is the maid in the movie.
What? Isn't there one with Christina Ricci too?
Yes, that's the Lizzie Borden Chronicles.
Okay.
And that was a television show, I believe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
On Lifetime. Correct me if I'm wrong. When I went to the Lizzie Borden house, that show is actually still out.
Oh, so but it was real popular to do tours at that time.
It was really popular to do tours at that time. I didn't watch the show. I tried watching it after, and I love Christina Ricci, but I did not like the show.
You know, I've read reviews, because I've never watched the show, but I have looked it up. Mm-hmm. You're not the first person to tell me that. Or like the first thing I've read.
It did not go far.
That's sad, because they could do so much with that story.
It was terrible, terrible writing. I mean, no offense to writers out there, because I know how hard your job is. Okay, I'm in school. I get it. But also, they had so much to chew on and not enough oomph.
Yeah.
They just didn't have it. They had the right girl, though. Christina Ricci was a wonderful Lizzie Borden. She knows how to play those weird characters.
She's the OG, you know.
She is.
I take that back. Maybe Winona Ryder would be, but
yeah, I get that. But still, she is an OG.
Yeah,
she is. She's just more from our generation. She was like a '90s OG.
Yeah, the Addams Family, all that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They also speculated that Lizzie was actually a lesbian.
I've heard that.
And that they found Lizzie, you know, with either the maid or her friend Alice Russell. There was like all these different rumors. Theories and rumors that circulated.
That's so gruel.
I was trying to say great, but like then I was trying to say cool. Girl.
That's a Mean Girls reference if you didn't catch on to that there.
But I'm sure you guys did. Okay, so we're going to fast forward later in life. So Lizzie gets away with this crazy murder. Emma's just there. She's in her 40s. She's living her life. She ain't doing shit. They get a lot of money. When he died, I told you, Andrew was worth $9 million in today's money. So they had plenty to live off of the rest of their life.
Popular one in sewing class.
Okay, move aside. So Maggie, the maid, she left. She died actually in 1948.
1948?
1948. So she was a young girl when these murders occurred.
Yeah.
She died in 1948 in Montana. So she moved across the country.
She got the fuck out.
On her deathbed, she confessed to her sister that she lied about her testimony in the trial of Lizzie Borden. She confessed that to her sister on her deathbed all the way in Montana. She kept everything a secret. But we don't know what her secret was. We just know that she lied in her testimony. Ugh. What did she lie about?
Yes.
Just say it. You're on your deathbed. But at least we know that much. Lizzie definitely killed her. If that doesn't tell you, I don't know what else. Well.
And she moved away. She probably didn't want to be hacked herself.
She left. She moved across the country in Montana, established a family out there, and died, and told her sister in 1948 that she lied.
Goodness.
Another suspect was John Morse, Uncle John. And he rarely was seen with the family. So it was really, even though him and Andrew were close, after his sister had died, Lizzie's biological mom, he didn't really come over much anymore.
He was just like a distant relative.
But they,
at that point.
Exactly. But they did cooperate his story, and he had an alibi. Neighbors also said they saw a stranger, not John Morse, but a stranger knocking on the doors of the Borden's house that night before as well. But nobody could take care of this or figure it out.
Identify who it was.
Exactly. After the trial, the Borden sisters, they moved into a large and really modern house in the Hill neighborhood. The Hill neighborhood in Fall River was like the richest neighborhood in the city. So they took all their money and they went to the Hill, and they didn't leave Fall River, but they moved into that really nice neighborhood
Yeah.
that Andrew refused to live in because it was too much money.
Yeah. They got their indoor plumbing at least.
Yes, they did. Lizzie changed her name from Lizzie because her real name really was Lizzie. It was not Elizabeth. It was Lizzie. But she changed it to Lisbeth
Yeah.
A. Borden. And they named their new house Maplecroft because it was common for people to name their estates back then. They had several live-in maids, a housekeeper, and a coachman. Emma was living with Lizzie. So they both took this money and bought a house together.
And they still stayed together for some time after the murders.
Exactly.
Or after her trial, I'm sorry.
Yes. And because Abby was, this is really interesting, because Abby was clearly murdered first, her family didn't get any money because all of her assets that she could claim as the spouse went directly to Andrew.
Oh my God.
And then Andrew died and it went to the girls.
Wow.
Yep. How calculated is that?
Yeah.
When they were all fighting about money days leading up to the murders.
Jeez.
It's all money motivated. It makes sense. She had no other bearings. Her and her sister were literally living there until their dad died, waiting for his money. That is the only thing I can think of.
He just jump-started his death.
They did. They jump-started his death. Now, Abby's family did get a settlement claim because they sued for obvious reasons. So they did get a pretty handsome settlement, but nowhere near to what Lizzie and
Emma
inherited. Yes, exactly. Obviously, Lizzie was ostracized from the Fall River community. They did not like her in the churches. They did not invite her to outings. They did not speak to her. And
She was the black sheep at that point.
She was. It was just taboo. Because they didn't believe her. Even though she was acquitted by law, it was just too much drama. And people didn't get that deep back then, you guys. It was a no-no to talk about yourself. It was a no-no to gossip, but people did it anyways, right? As people do. She was ostracized. Lizzie moves to Rhode Island. And she actually makes the headlines again 5 years later in 1897 for shoplifting.
Shocker.
She's a millionaire. And she just can't help it.
She has to be bad.
She has to be bad.
Bad bitch.
She is a bad bitch, and not a good bad bitch.
No.
She's just a crazy bad shit bad bitch.
She's what's that song, Buck Cherry? She's a Buck Cherry bad bitch. Isn't that who sings that song?
I have no idea.
You're a crazy bitch. Well, I don't know. Never mind. Forget that. There's a song. It's like an early 2000s song. I don't know why I've been on such an early 2000s kick this week.
I know what you're talking about.
She was that kind of crazy bitch.
She was a crazy bitch. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed this really gross story. Shelby's got something cooking up for us. Carly's out of college for a couple weeks, so we're just hoping to get some consistent episodes up.
Yes.
Follow us on social media at Bones and Brunch the podcast. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. And definitely check out our YouTube channel.
YouTube. All of our episodes are uploaded on YouTube as well.
Yep. Check us out on Spotify. And we'll see y'all next week. I'm Carly.
I'm Shelby.
See y'all later.
Bye.